Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. March 22, 2022, yes, 3/22/22, the Institutional Corruption Edition. And we begin with that story from the BBC. How did a 37-year-old murder lead to continued claims of institutional corruption at the Metropolitan Police? Well, it's because after 5 investigations, there's never been one conviction or even anyone charged, and it involves a gentleman named Daniel Morgan, and the Daniel Morgan Inquiry Panel found that there was institutional corruption within the Metropolitan Police Force, and that in recent years, the Metropolitan Police Force has concealed its own failings to fight this corruption. The Met rejected the claim that there was institutional corruption at the police force, but it did say that perhaps some officers were prone to corruption. So, more corruption in England. Next up, from ABC News, a Lebanese judge has charged the country's central bank governor with corruption, including illegal enrichment and money laundering during Lebanon's economic meltdown. Clearly one of the most corrupt countries around. Lebanon continues just to be a cornucopia of corruption, money laundering, and other nefarious conduct. Next up, from the Wall Street Journal, an interesting article that crypto is an unlikely route from Russian sanctions evasion. That has clearly been on the minds of many compliance professionals and lawmakers as well, that will crypto be used by Russia to evade trade sanctions. Cyber attack, ransom, and cryptocurrency mining are unlikely to generate revenue to replace the business activity in the sanctions country. It's an interesting way to think about it, because you can't flip a switch overnight and run a G20 economy on cryptocurrency. There's just not enough liquidity. So that's going to be something that I think lawmakers and compliance professionals need to consider in their risk assessments going forward. And finally, Wells Fargo is back in the news. Yes, our favorite corrupt U.S. bank continues to draw lots of lawsuits, and this time it is for discriminating against black homeowners by relying on a modernized version of redlining that allegedly denies them lower interest rates through refinancing and forcing them to pay for money. A lawsuit was filed last week in federal court in San Francisco over these issues. So Wells Fargo back in the news again. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.